Hi, I'm Eda, Customer Success Manager here at awork. In this webinar, I'll get you ready to set up your workspace. You can expect a structured overview of the most important settings, practical tips, and of course, our live chat support. And with that, I'd say let's get started. All right, so today we are going to be working through the workspace setup project. That project has likely already been created within your workspace, and that's why you're here today. If you've gotten here another way and you have never heard about this project before, don't worry. If you're an admin in your workspace, you can super easily create it by just clicking the little plus next to projects and then type in workspace setup and click on to next, which will bring you to our templates. And here you'll find the workspace setup template. And this project is going to guide you through all the most important steps to aid you in setting up awork. It is organized in 3 different phases. So the first phase is just planning the awork implementation. So this covers things like defining your key user, setting up goals and a schedule, but also has all the information on support and inspiration that you could use during your onboarding. And then we have the last phase, which is phase 3, which is then actually going into onboarding your users. So how do you invite them? What resources can you give them? What are some things that you should define beforehand? And what kind of sessions should you organize? And our primary focus today is going to be that second phase, so setting up your workspace. And I'm not going to follow the order of this task list exactly, but we will cover everything that's in here. So from the general settings to custom fields to user management, all of those things are going to be talked about today. And I would like to start with docs. Docs are a really great place for you to put an internal wiki. So if you would like to define beforehand how awork is going to be used. So for example, who can create new projects and when are new projects created and what project templates are available and should be used. What custom fields or tags are available, and any conventions that you would like to write down that will make it easier for your team to just kind of start using awork right away without having to think about the how too much. So this is a really great place for that in your workspace. Now, if you would like to access the settings of your workspace, all you have to do is you have to click onto the little show more underneath the time reports and then click into settings. And I'm going to move through the different tabs here. So first of all, we're going to land on the general page. And this is, like the name says, general settings for your workspace. So your workspace name, your logo. If you are in a professional plan and above, you can also adjust your URL here. If you're not in a professional or above, then you can buy a custom domain if that is something that's important to you. And I would highly recommend to at least look at the workspace name and the workspace logo before you start inviting all of your users. For your admins, it's okay if it doesn't have a perfect name, if it doesn't have a perfect logo, but for the rest of your users, it can be good if the invitation comes with your company name and a logo that they're familiar with, so that they are less likely to assume that the invitation might be spam and accept it right away. Now here you can also find general settings with regards to awork Connect. So awork Connect, if you've never heard about it, allows you to invite external users into your workspace projects. This comes at no extra cost for them or for you. And here you will also find the settings to enable our AI capabilities or disable if you don't want to use either of those features. Now, underneath that, we have the time tracking settings. Most of these do not apply to administrators. The only one that would actually apply is this first one here. So if you are looking to disable time tracking from your workspace, depending on the plan that you're in, you have this toggle here that you're able to use. And if you pay really close attention to the left-hand side of my screen right now, so to the sidebar, if I toggle this back on, this will automatically have the times and time report sections reappear, because now I have access to them again. There is a couple other settings here that I just briefly want to touch on. So the first one here being preventing time tracking on done projects, but also restricting tracking time and editing track times in the past days. So these settings could be really good if you, for example, every single time a project is marked as complete, give it and then have it invoiced. So you don't put any extra times after a project has already been invoiced to a client. So this is where you could make sure that there's no possibilities for your users to track any times on completed projects. And then the same kind of goes for the restriction of time tracking into the past, as well as editing track times in the past. If you have a very regular billing cycle, this is just something that can help make sure that there's no extra times that were not accounted for in any invoices. Similar to that, you can also prevent time tracking into the future. So a use case here could be, for example, a user tracking all of their times on a Monday, but then maybe they are out of office and they just have all of these track times that they actually never worked on. So this could be a good way to prevent that from happening. You can also restrict time tracking to 10 hours per day, and you can prevent time tracking without a project selected. And again, this can be really good if you are invoicing your times, because then at the end of a quarter, for example, when you are pulling a time report, you don't have 100 hours of times that are neither tracked on a project nor any tasks. And then you would have to go to the users individually and kind of try to figure out where these times came from. So if you are invoicing your times, or if you're really trying to understand what times are being tracked on by your users in your workspace, I'd highly recommend toggling this setting on, just so that you have a good overview of what is going on and you don't have any unaccounted times at the end of a quarter. And then lastly, we have the task settings here. So this is to allow multi-user assignment, which is really good if you are working on tasks together. So you have the option to assign the task to multiple users at the same time, rather than having, for example, 3 tasks that are assigned to 3 different users. You can just have one that is assigned to all 3, and then will be visible to all 3 and task filters and so on. So those are the general settings. Next up, let's move to the teams. Teams help you structure your workspace, and they are also tied to the permissions management because they can restrict visibility on projects too. You can create any and all teams that your heart desire. So they could be locations, like I have here, the Berlin and Dublin team, for example. They could be teams, so functions like design, engineering, or marketing. And they could be smaller teams. So for example, my backend dev and front-end dev here, depending on how I am looking to structure my workspace. And once you have created these teams, you're able to add them to your projects. So a project can be assigned to one or multiple teams. And if this is tied to the permissions management, which we'll go into much more detail in a second, this would then also only allow these users to see these projects if their team is assigned to it, or if they have been added specifically as a project member. So it helps you segment your workspace, and it also helps restrict visibility. And then the teams are also really great to use in, for example, project or task filters. You can use them in the planner to quickly load an entire team into your user workload view so that you don't have to pick them one by one. And then you also have the teams in the left-hand sidebar here all the way on the bottom. So any team that I'm a part of, I can kind of like toggle open or toggle close and see any open projects are assigned to it right now. So there's a couple of different reasons why teams might be a really great fit, but it really depends at the end of the day of how you would like to structure your workspace and also how many users you're using awork with. If you're a team of 5, maybe you don't have to hide any projects. If you're a team of 500, I would definitely recommend using teams to just keep things a little bit tidier, not overwhelm everyone. All right, and this again, just a quick disclaimer that teams are not available in all paid plans. So if ever I'm talking about something and you do not see this option, or you are not able to, for example, click onto this little plus, That could be because it is simply not available in your plan. If you want to have a look at what plan you're in, you can click right over here to the managed subscription, and then you'll learn more about that there. And on our website, we have a very detailed overview of all of the prices and what is and isn't available in those plans. Next up, we have our time off tab, and here you can do two different things. So you can add public holidays and you can create workspace-wide absences. Public holidays, I think, are probably very self-explanatory. What you can do is you can add a new region. Here you can choose a country, and I am going to do Spain because I miss the nice warm weather. And then next up, I am just going to pick a region at random, and you also have the option to set that as a default. And once you're happy with it, the name suits, you just click on to save, and just like that, you have created a new region. And if you would like to add users to it, you just do it from this action menu right here. So now Adam and James, they're both in Spain, lucky them, and I've just added them. And as you can see, the public holidays here are added right away, and those now reflect in the planner. So in the planner, these public holidays are automatically created as absences. There's nothing that I have to do from my end. They're just there and I don't have to worry about it. Now, if we have workspace-wide absences, so this could be a workspace-wide holiday, maybe our company is closed over the holidays in December, or maybe we have a summer vacation that is mandatory for everyone to go on. This is where I'd be able to create that. So I just click on to add, and then I pick my first and my last day. I give it a title, and I can also decide, should that go for all regions, or maybe that is just Berlin specific. And once I've created them, again, here's where I can see them. I can see the duration, I can see the length, and also what regions they're applied to. And of course, if they're no longer relevant or I want to edit them, I could also go ahead and do that from these action menus right here. And these are really great if you are working with the planner, so you're doing a lot of capacity planning and you don't want to either ask your users to create their absences manually, especially when it comes to public holidays, and you also don't want to do that for them. So this is where you go to set that up before they join. Next up, I'm going to shift out of this menu here for a second, and we're going to talk about clients for a moment. So clients are a great way to also organize your projects. You are able to assign a client to a project. And then when I click into that client, I can see any and all projects that might be currently assigned to them that are active. I can also see any projects, so if there's any that might have been closed already. And here I also have an overview of all of the times that have been tracked on this client. So this is just a great way to kind of like organize your projects again, assign them to clients if you're working with clients, and you can easily create new clients just from this little plus right here. When you have created those clients, there is a little bit of more information that you can add. So if you want to go to the actions and edit, you're able to also add some contact information, some custom fields here over the others. So if there's more contact details you'd like to add, you're able to do that right from here. These clients are also great for filtering and reporting. So again, this is something that you can use in your project and your task filters, but also in your time reports. So if, again, using the example of the end of the quarter, you are trying to see how much time was spent on tasks and projects across the client IKEA, this is something that you can easily use as a filter and grouping criteria. Now, jumping back into the settings, let's go to the categories. There is two different categories that we have. There is the type of work and there is the project types. Type of work is for tasks and times, and project types are for projects. I'll start with the project types. Those are optional. This is an optional setting that you can add here to add to your projects to define what group, so to say, these projects belong to. So are those client projects? Are those internal projects? Are those marketing projects? Whatever helps you group your projects you can put here. And this is a grouping option also in the projects view. So this is nice if you want to group all your projects by consulting projects to see just how much is going on there and what's happening. But this is a completely optional setting. So you can use this if it helps you, but you do not have to. You do have to use the types of work. Those are mandatory for the creation of new tasks and for any tracked times. And what we would recommend here is to potentially have also a chat with the team and to see what are they working on. Of course, you know what they're working on, but kind of like what groups of things are they working on? So what makes sense for you to put down here? And also thinking a little bit ahead into the future, a little bit longer term, what would you like to achieve with this option of grouping, right? Do you want to filter, for example, by all design tasks so that you can easily see all open tasks of your design team? Would you like to use a task filter in the planner to show any front-end tasks so that you can quickly assign them based on workload to your front-end devs? Do you want to figure out at the end of the year how much time was spent on non-billable or other tasks and times so that you can crack down a little bit further and see what can be corrected there, or if really, you know, all that time needed to be spent on that? And that's why you want your team to use that type of work. Type of work, I'm just going to click onto the Z on my dashboard right here, and that is going to give me the pop-up for a time tracking. Type of works are always visible if I, for example, track a new time, and then I can click on it and I have this drop-down list. And so what I would recommend as well is create as many as are necessary, but as few as possible. Because if you can imagine, you have a list here of, let's say, 50 types of work. It is going to do two things, potentially. One, for sure, it's going to slow your team down because they will have to read through that entire list. They will have to remember what's in there. If something new is in there, they'll have to kind of like acknowledge that. And it'll just take them a little bit longer to create a new time entry or to create a new task because they'll have to figure out what type of work to use first. And then second of all, if they don't do that, it's just prone to error, right? So if you have a front end task, but you don't look at it and then you just save it as administration, then in the end, your reports are not going to be as accurate as you might want them to be. So the types of work are really important to think about. First, what does your team do? And then what do you want to achieve by using those? Technically, you only have to have one type of work, because again, it is a mandatory option, or it is a mandatory setting to use with any newly created task and any track times. So one definitely has to be there. And then, like I said, you can create as many as you need, but I would recommend to create as few as actually possible, just to keep it easy for you and your team. And then if you find great success in them, of course, you can break them down further. Okay, so next up, let's talk about custom fields. Custom fields are a really great way to allow you to add standardized fields, both for your tasks as well as for projects. Those can be added to templates, which we'll talk about in a second as well. So if you have any fields that are, required to be added to your task or your projects just to track some additional data, this is where you'd add them. We have a couple of different types of custom fields. So we have text, numbers, dates, so on and so forth. And if this is something that is interesting for you and you are looking for some inspiration on how to use them, definitely click onto the what are custom fields over here. That's going to bring you to our Help Center article. And there's a couple of different examples mentioned there as well. Or you could always head on over to our community forum and get inspired there too. Custom fields for tasks will have to be activated in projects before they are visible there. And you can either do that directly from within here, so from within the workspace settings. If you click on to activate here, you can pick a bunch of different projects all at once and then activate this custom field in there. If you have rights permissions on projects, so if you are, for example, just a project lead, but not an administrator, once a custom field has been created here, you're also able to add them to the project and then start using them there. Now, with regards to the custom fields for projects, those have to be added from right here, and they are automatically added to any and all project that has been created in your workspace. So there's no way to do that from within a project. It always has to be done in the project settings. Now, another way to kind of classify or to filter for tasks, projects, users, and clients are tags. One thing that I would like to mention here is that those are 4 completely separate pools. So for tags, you have the option to freely create those. I'm in the pop-up here to create a new task right now. And so if, for example, I want to say urgent, if there is nothing there right now, I just press enter and I create that right away. Now, any user with writing permissions on either projects, tasks, clients, or users is able to add, edit, and delete tasks. So we have no overarching tag management. There's no library or any way where you can see all of the tags that were created in your workspace for those 4 different pools. And again, they're completely separate pools. So just because they have a tag here on a task that is urgent does not mean that it's automatically applied to a project or that it even exists in that project pool. I'd have to create it there as well to be able to use it. Now, tags are really great, again, to add that extra layer of information onto projects, tasks, users, and clients. But because there is no overarching management, personally, I think in a lot of use cases, it's better to use custom fields because they can be predefined, they can be added as needed, and then your team just has to use them and they don't have to create anything new, especially with tags not being able to be managed within the workspace, but by every single user. If you choose to use them, I would just recommend that you really clearly communicate that anyone can edit them as long as they have writing permissions, and to never delete a tag unless it has been previously discussed with the team, because someone else might be using it and then it will disappear from all of the projects or tasks or users or clients that it was previously on, and that is just a big headache. And it's also a great kind of callback to the doc that I recommended. So the awork wiki, you can have an entire page just on tags. What tags are used by what team, which might be outdated, which can be removed. And just like custom fields, tags can also be used in project and in task filters so that you're able to just see a group of information. So for example, any urgent tasks quickly without having to look through a lot of information. Now, next up, let's talk about templates. There is 2 different kinds of templates that we have. We have project templates and we have task templates. Project templates we already saw at the very start of the session when I wanted to create the workspace setup project. So this is an entire project with, of course, its name, its description, its tasks, its lists, its custom fields, its automations. Pretty much anything that you can think of can be added to a project template. And a project template will allow you to create a complete project from scratch. And this is really great if you have very similar processes that are just repeating over and over again. So if, for example, you have a website creation and that has the same list, the same tasks, the same assignees, the same budgets, timings over and over and over again, definitely use a project template for that. Now, if your projects are very different and maybe you are working more on like a building block foundation, so your project is just 15 different phases and it's maybe this one this time, maybe that one next time, then you can still use templates. But for that, I would recommend that you use task templates. So task templates are one or multiple lists, including their tasks, that are loaded into an existing project. So it will not create any new project, but it will create new lists and new tasks within a project that has already been created. So you could, for example, have different project phases and then just use whichever one is relevant at that time. It could be something like the LinkedIn post that we have here, which you might need in every single project, but sometimes they come in quite handy. And if you want to combine the best out of both worlds, you have very different projects, but they should always have the same structure. Then you can create one project template that is used for the creation of all new project that, for example, has a really good description that should always be filled out, that has all the relevant project and task status, that has, for example, also the automations, and maybe like some guidelines. So like one organizational list of things that need to happen that, for example, also mention the task templates, and then you can use the task templates to load in the relevant lists and all of the tasks that you want to use there. Okay. Now we're going to move into the permissions, and we're going to spend quite some time here, so I hope you're comfortable. So we have two different kinds of permission roles. There is workspace-wide permission roles and there is project-based permission roles. And the workspace-wide permission roles is what you're going to assign to your user the second you invite them. So just to show you, if I click onto the invite user here right now, I always have to then in this step also assign them a role. And that is the workspace-wide permission role that I have to assign them here. And this role essentially says the second that this user has accepted their invitation and they log into awork for the first time, what can they see and what can they do? And you always have the option to keep that role quite strict. So for example, they can see everything, they can read everything, but they cannot edit or create anything new. However, then you would like to add them to very specific projects. And in those projects, you then assign them a project-based permission role. And in that project, they are actually the lead. So you assign them, for example, the project lead role right here, which has writing permissions on everything within a project. So the project details, which is the homepage, the tasks, the times, the docs. And one thing that's really important to keep in mind here is that the project-based permissions can further or enhance, I don't know how to say it properly right now, they can widen the scope of permissions that I have on that specific projects, but they cannot restrict me. So an administrator, for example, if they are added to a project with a project member role, they will still be able to see and add and edit all of the project times because we cannot restrict them. We can only broaden their permissions, so to say. I hope that's a nice way of saying it, and I hope that you understand what I'm saying. So an admin cannot be restricted, but then any of the other roles that we have created, if they are quite restricted, their permissions can be broadened. So they can have more permissions, but they can never have less permissions because of the project-based permission role. And I'm going to go into the workspace-wide permissions role first because there's a bit more information in here and go through all of the different settings just to explain what you can see here. So we have a couple different clusters here, and I'm just going to go cluster by cluster. We have the global project permissions first. Now, this first toggle here is whether a user can create a new project or not. So if that is on, they can create new projects, public as well as private. And if it is off, they cannot create any new projects, neither public nor private projects. The second setting here is with regards to teams, and this kind of goes back to the team restriction that I mentioned earlier as well. So if we have that toggled on, that restricts our users to be able to only see teams of or projects of the team. So only those projects where the team was added, I will be able to see. Or any of the projects that I was explicitly added to as a project member, I will be able to see. If that option is off, I can see all public projects. And then underneath, we have the access in projects. So any of the projects that I have access to, if that is all of them, if that is the one that I have been added to as a project member, or if that's the one of my team, what can I see and what can I do as a default. So here, for example, now I could see all of the project details. I could see and also write all of the tasks and also docs and time. So this is super open right now. If I wanted to restrict this a little bit, all I have to do is just, change this here to read, or maybe the times even off. And then this is applied automatically, and the users would now no longer be able to just change all the details on the project page unless I gave them a project-based role that has writing permission on that. Now, underneath here, we have the global user permissions. So here, again, I am able to restrict my users to seeing only other users that I share a team with. So if I am in one team, I will only see those users. If I am in multiple teams, I will see those users as well. And what's important to keep in mind here, that this also comes into play for not only inviting other users to projects, but also assigning tasks to other users. So if I have this restriction on and I need to assign a task to someone outside of my team, I simply cannot do it because we do not share any teams, so I cannot see that user. So if you are working across multiple teams a lot, I would not recommend toggling this on. If you have a very, very clear separation of teams and they do not work together, then of course you can toggle this option on so that they are not able to see all workspace users, but only the ones in teams that are shared. And then underneath that here, we have the user details. So the user details and the user times are something that you can find in the users tab. So first of all, do I want my user to access this? Do I want them to be able to click in here and see all the details that a user has added? So that is, for example, the teams that they're in, that is any information like birthdays or email addresses. And then the times are right here as well. So this is going to give me an overview of all of the times that they have tracked on different projects. And now what's important to call out here is that these times might not show me actually all times, because again, if there is a restriction set in place where I can only see projects of my team, but this user is in a different team and they have access to a project that I don't have access to, of course, I am not going to be able to see those times. So I would only see in here what I have access to. So with the team's restriction, for example, those would only be shared projects. If they are on any other projects that I do not have access to, I cannot see them here. And this goes for the user planning as well. So the user planning would allow me to either access the planner at all, see other users that I have access to and their weekly capacities, their, whatever is going on there, what tasks are in there, or edit them as well. And here again, I will be able to see any and all tasks that I have access to. So if I can see all projects, great. I can see all assigned tasks here. If I can see a very small amount of projects, those are the only ones that I'm going to be able to see here in the user planning as well. So these permissions are interlocked, so to say. You are never going to accidentally give a user more permissions if you have restricted them in a previous step. Next up, we have the global client permissions, and this simply says, can I even see this client tab? And if I have write permissions, can I edit and add or delete, for example, clients that already exist there? Now, next up, we have some general settings. So here we have project, task, and workspace settings. And these allow me to, for example, see types of work and project types, but also create task and project templates, or give me additional information to the workspace here as well. Now, depending on how we set up our permissions, we are also able to toggle on or off additional menu items or setting menu items. So if I, for example, if you pay attention to this right here, toggle on the workspace settings, this is going to give my user more access to these different views that weren't previously there. So maybe it is just a little bit shy right now. Oh, it did not toggle on properly. There we go. So now we have the option to also, for example, let them see the general tab if we want to, or take that away. But if we take away those workspace settings options here right now, you can see that is grayed out now. It's disabled. It is not even an option. And the same goes for the menu items here. If I toggle off the user planning, that is automatically going to be taken away from this user's menu because they don't have access to it, so they should not be able to access it either. So if we toggle it back on, it's back there. And now if you want to give them the option to track times on projects, but you don't want them to be able to see the time report, you could, for example, hide that here. One question that we receive quite a lot with regards to time tracking, and that's why I'm going to address it here now, is can I give my user access to the time reports, but they can only pull a time report on themselves? And that is not possible. Either we give our user access to see the time reports, and so either that is all of the project times that they have access to or also all of the other users' times. We can give them access to that, or we do not. There is no option right now to filter out other users from the time report if they are working on shared projects, for example. So even with the project times only and not the user times here, if I turned that off, this user would still have the option to go into the time reports and they would be able to see all the times tracked by them as well as other users on projects that they're working on with them. If you're looking for a view where a user can just see all of their times but not other users' times, I would recommend to direct them to the times view. Here they can not only see their day and their week, but they can also see a view that gives them their time. And this can be grouped, for example, not by year, but by quarter as well. And I think I don't have anything in there, so it's maybe acting up a little bit there. This can be grouped. So if I want to group it by project rather than all, I can do that here as well, just so that I personally have a good overview of my times. But here I cannot see the times of any other users, only mine. So if this is something that you're looking to achieve, that is where you should direct them to. Now, these two settings, I just want to mention, if you are letting your users create new projects, it's probably also smart to let them create templates, just so that they can make their lives a little bit easier. If you toggle on these options, technically, it also gives them access to project types and types of work. And I am a strong believer of these two settings only being editable by administrators, just to keep things smooth across your workspace. So if you want them to create and edit templates, but you don't want them to create and edit types of work or project types, you simply come back down here to the settings menu visibility, and then the categories can just be toggled off. So now they could see and edit templates, but they cannot see or edit your categories. Achieve the best of both worlds right there. Okay, so that is the workspace-wide permission role. Now, let's have a quick look at the project-based permission role. The project-based permission role can easily be added over the plus role, just like the workspace-wide permission role. And you have 4 different options here. So you have project details, that is the project home view, that is your name, that is your due date, that is your budget, that is your project members, and that also allows users to, for example, delete a project. You have your project tasks. They can be off, so they cannot be seen at all unless they are specifically assigned. They can be seen or they can be written. And then you have your times and your docs. Whenever you create a new role, you also have the option to say, should that be your default, or is that for an external user? And external users, again, Awork Connect, I'll talk about more in a second. And once you have created them, they are right here, and you will see them every single time that you add a user to a project. You'll be asked to also assign them a different project role. The colors here are super easy and straightforward. Red means that this option is off. Yellow means that they can read, and green means that they can write. For the workspace-wide permission roles, it's a little bit different. Red means that all options within a cluster are toggled off, so they're all off. Yellow means that some of them, but not all of them, are toggled on. And green simply means that all of the options are toggled on. So there's a slight difference here. If you're unsure, I would always recommend to just kind of jump into that role and have a look and see how things are connected. Now, one thing that's important to mention here as well, of course, these workspace-wide permission roles are connected to users that are licensed. Only administrators can add new users to your workspace. So while existing users can invite others to projects, that only goes for users that are already within your workspace. Only administrators can click onto that little plus here and they can add new users to your workspace. So you don't have to worry about any of your users going rogue and adding a lot of new members to your workspace that you have not signed off on. At the bottom of the page here, you can also see all of your users. You can see if they're active or deactivated, and you can also see their permissions role. And if you want to change it, you just have to click here and confirm, and just like that, their role has been adjusted. Now, if you have a lot of information in other tools already that you would like to import into awork, you just come here. So we have a couple of custom importers for Monday, Notion, Asana, and Jira. And if you just click onto the Start Import, it is going to guide you step by step through the process on how to import information. If you have your projects right now in Excel spreadsheets or in a different tool that is not listed here, you can also just use this importer right here. We have a template available to you so that you can figure out how to organize your information in a way that will be imported properly. And if you have any questions with regards to that, always reach out to our support. They are happy to help. Now, there is also lots of different integrations that you can use. If you want to have a look, open the integrations library. I can't do that right now because I'm in the desktop app and it'll open in the browser for me, but just have a look there. You are able to have a look in all the different integrations or into all the different integrations that we have. And we have very detailed Help Center articles on all of those as well. So you will definitely find all of the information that you're looking for. And now we also have, of course, our developer docs in here. So if you're looking to connect anything to awork through our API, have a look at those developer docs. And if you have any questions with regards to that specifically, I would recommend you hop on over into our community. Our community has our developer forum in there, so our developers are in there every day, all day long, happy to answer your questions. So that does not go through the support, that goes through our developers directly, and that is in the community forum. Now, last but not least, let's talk about Connect. So Connect allows you to invite external users, so any user that does not share your email domain, to projects in your workspace. And like I showed in the permissions management, they have a separate set of permissions that can be assigned to them so that they can be given the right kind of access on each project. From this view right here, as an administrator, you're able to see any and all users that have been added as Connect users, so any external users. And you're also able to jump into that project right from here or remove them from that project, which will then effectively also remove them from your workspace. If you've been invited to any Connect projects, you will be able to see them in your sidebar. Now, I don't have any actually, but there would be like another little part here that would say external projects, and then I can just access them right from within my workspace. If you want to learn more about Connect users, again, have a look at our Help Center article. There's lots of information to find there. Of course, external users only ever have access to the project that you have invited them to. They cannot see anything else in your project, and you can invite them to as many projects as you'd like. There is no limit on that. And they, of course, could also invite you to projects in their workspace, and you can collaborate there as well. Okay, so that is all the important settings that I want to go over today. Let's jump back into the workspace setup project here for a second. If at any later stage you want to have a look at Connect again, you can just open this task up. There is going to be a description, there is going to be some tips and tricks from our end, and there is also linked resources. So we have video tutorials on YouTube, and we have our Help Center articles linked here as well. So if at any stage after this session you want to read through these things again, have a look at the workspace setup project that either has already been created in your workspace or that you will create after this session, to find anything that is important and that you might want to read over again. So our recommendation is that as a group of administrators or key users, you have a look through this project, work through this project task by task, so that at the end you have a good understanding of all of the different settings that you should have a look at before you go ahead and invite your team, and also the things that you are already able to create before they come join, so that when they join, the workspace is nice and ready for them. And now in this project as well, you have 2 extra lists. So you have a list for open questions. So if you're working together through this project in a group, this might be a good way to just keep track of all the open questions that you might want to talk about again. And here you could also write down your goals. So this could just be a really helpful exercise to kind of decide what you are trying to achieve. So if that is improved transparency, what does that mean, right? To enable to improve transparency, you would have to not only create your projects and tasks within awork, but they would also have to be maintained. And what does that maintenance mean? What kind of information needs to be added to projects and tasks for you to actually be able to improve transparency long term? And those goals I would also recommend to add to that awork wiki so that your users are aware of what you're trying to achieve here as well. Now, last but not least, if you're ever lost or unsure on what to do or what you're even looking at, have a look at the support and help button right here. Not only are you able to contact our support, they are available Monday through Friday from 9 to 5 p.m. via chat and email directly from within your workspace, but you also always have the For This Page content. So now that I'm looking at a project, it's going to give me, for example, Help Center articles that are relevant. But if I moved on over to the dashboard and I clicked it again, this is now going to give me different information. So if you are ever lost, definitely have a look at that to figure out what you should be doing here. Now you know how to set up your workspace and what you need to keep in mind. If you have any questions, feel free to check out the Workspace Setup project, where you'll find detailed descriptions, tips and tricks, videos, and Help Center articles. Or contact our support team directly.